On today's episode of the REI Marketing Weekly, we are talking about GEO, Generative Engine Optimization, which is code for ranking with artificial intelligence or AI. Whether you're using ChatGPT, Gemini, or any other type of software for AI, we're going to be talking about how you can generate leads, build your presence to generate leads with AI and why it's important. Now, here's the thing. The guest that we have on the show, his name is Bryan Sekine, and he's an expert when it comes to SEO. He's been digging a lot into the GEO space, which we've had a guest on just recently talking about this as well. But I think the previous guest that we have hit it from one angle. Bryan hits it from another angle, which is a lot more tactical. And I think that you guys are going to walk away with a lot of to-dos from this show. So here's what I'm going to encourage you to do. As you're listening, make sure that you do take notes, but make sure that you take these in phases, one step at a time. Now, towards the end of the episode, Bryan lays out a checklist that he actually shares with us that will be linked down in the description below, so make sure you go check that out. But he gives us a checklist that you can go through and rank yourself from like the preparation phases of your presence online and the way that it looks. So he explains it as you go through and you score it. It'll give you a final score, and then you'll know what you need to work on. So make sure you go check that out. But what we talk about is a lot of tactical stuff. We do speak on SEO just a little bit, but what I really wanted him to dig into is the way that AI generates searches for users. So if your sellers are going to ChatGPT or to Gemini and looking up who to sell their house to in Chicago or who to sell their house to in Atlanta, and they have a certain motivation, is your website coming up as a suggestion and the source for them to go to, because AI is going to be giving them the direct answer for that. So make sure that you listen up. Bryan has been in the SEO space for 7 years. He actually worked for our good friends over at Investor Carrot, or Carrot, otherwise known as. Clients of mine, but also very good friends. I love Trevor Mock and then Brady and those guys over there. But he worked with them on their team, and now he has his own agency specifically doing this for active real estate investors. And so you guys are going to get a lot of value out of this episode today. But once again, take it into bite-sized pieces. There's even a lot of stuff that he talked about that I'm like, man, I gotta dig into your brain a little bit more. And when it comes to this kind of stuff, just don't get overwhelmed. Start working on the ABCs of it, and we lay that out for you today. So without further ado, thank you for joining us today, but let's go ahead and get into it. My good friend, Bryan Sekine. Welcome back to the REI Marketing Weekly. It's your host, Josh Culler. And today I've got my good friend with me, Bryan Sekine, and I'm excited about this topic. I had to reschedule you from last week, but that was kind of disappointing. But I've very much been looking forward to this recording. I'm not blowing smoke, I promise, Bryan. Like, this is actually a topic that I've been very, very interested in. I've dug into it as much as I can, but tapping into your brain when it comes to this type of topic is going to be very interesting to see what you guys are working on. So to uncover the veil, what we're going to be talking about, which you've clicked on the episode itself, you already know, guys, we're going to be talking about GEO, Generative Engine Optimization, which is code for AI, right? And so this is obviously a topic that has been coming up a lot more recently. And especially like it's different in your world as it is to mine. Like we've been using AI in the content creation space for, maybe a year or so, but I feel like it's just ramped up over the last 6 or 7 months and how much we've used it. And so with you, I feel like what we do from a content perspective, it's a really good kind of like segue into what you do from, the SEO part of it, the search part of it, right? Yeah. Which we'll talk about. And I'm a little bit still naive on how it works from a search standpoint. So one of the things I want to talk about first, before we get into that, and I already kind of gave you a heads up on this, one of the things I want to talk about is SEO. So you've been in this space for quite some time now. You actually worked for our good friends over at Carrot. And I'm highly interested, maybe just from a traditional, or if you want to turn it into a non-traditional standpoint, when it comes to SEO, what are some things that you see a lot of people making mistakes on and what they, really need to turn around and change? Has anything really changed over the last 7 years you've been in the space of SEO? Talk to me about kind of where it's at today.
Yeah, so one of the biggest things that's changed is just content creation in general. So, 7, 8 years ago, the general philosophy was you write blog posts about topics that you are interested in and you just publish it online, right? Just full blast, whatever you want to write about is going to help your website. And in the last 4 or 5 years, Google has come back and said, hey, the bar for entry has been raised. So the quality content has to be way better, and it can't just be something that you find interesting. It has to be something that's helpful, generally speaking, to everyone else as well. And it can't be something that's just repeated on the websites. So there's no more copying and pasting. And AI has certainly helped with that, but there's still a higher barrier of entry these days for blog posts specifically, for most websites in the SEO space.
Yeah, gotcha. That's interesting. Can you go a little bit more in depth into like, so you kind of gave a little bit of a skimming of the surface of what, especially Google is looking for from a content perspective. Like what your ideal client, what type of content, what's the process of developing it, how often, the frequencies, and is it just going to like one specific area of the website? Is it multiple pages on a website? Talk to me about like practicality wise, what that looks like.
Yeah. So really with real estate investors specifically, you have to think about, what sort of situation is someone coming to you for specifically, right? Like, let's say someone recently had a natural disaster, whether it's the fires in LA or if it's floods going on in Middle Tennessee or in South Carolina. They are looking to sell their distressed property and in an unconventional way. And so that's the premise that everyone needs to come at it from first and say, okay, if someone has just experienced their house being flooded or burned, like what are the emotions they're feeling? What are the resources that are going to help them figure out where to go next? And then how can you help guide them to a solution, even if it's not necessarily you, right? Because to be honest, there's a lot of situations where someone might get a lead, but the equity's not there, or the numbers don't add up, or there's just nothing you can do to help them. And that's fine, but being able to help them is that first step. And so when you go to think about writing blog posts and writing content for pages and like how someone might, navigate through your website, it's important to think about where they're at in what we call like the customer journey and figure out where they're coming in at, right? So let's say they're aware they have a problem and they're aware that cash home buyers or real estate investors can help them with that, but they don't know what that process looks like. They don't know how much money they can expect to get out of the deal. They don't know how quickly they can close. And so they need some education about how the whole process works. And so that's the kind of content that you can write about on your website. And then you can also highlight some of the experiences that you have, maybe from a past industry, maybe from past clients, maybe from your experience working with this specific situation, like talking again about fire damaged houses or flood damaged houses. So you can really add your own unique spin to it in the content and help guide them down that process. Now that can be not just through blog posts, but it could be through a page. It could be through one of your city pages. It could be on your homepage. The location is not as important as it is the quality of the content and whether or not it's actually helping people to solve their specific problems. So I would say in general, most real estate investors think, okay, I'm going to blast a bunch of content and we're going to cover every situation known to man, right? We're going to do divorce, we're going to do inherited house, we're going to do hoarder houses, fire damage, flood damage, the whole 9 yards. But really the better approach is to pick one situation that you know a lot about and that you have a lot of experience with and really double down on that.
Yeah, interesting. I know several people that they focus, obviously like their marketing complements this, but the type of motivation that they hit, they only pick like one or two different types of motivations. For example, like I have a good friend of mine that's in Atlanta that only does probate deals. And so all of his, and he's a real estate investor, but he has a little bit of a history in the SEO world, but all the content that he does is around probate. It's all about inheriting your house and that sort of thing and getting you out of those situations. And so he's like a very high ranked, I don't know if he's number 1 or 2, I haven't checked in a while, but very high ranked in SEO when it comes to probate in Atlanta specifically.
Yeah.
And so he's become the expert, the industry expert in that market, that's a highly competitive market. He's worked on it for years, but it's the only type of content that he does is because for the exact reason that you're giving. So for you, when you say, you may have skimmed over it, forgive me if you've already kind of defined this, but I was kind of looking for some cues on like the definition of when you say quality. Does it,
right?
I don't know if that means length, that means like the amount of keywords that you use, key phrases, like what is the definition of the quality of the content that you're talking about?
Yeah. And that's a really good question because that has changed over the past like 2 years. Okay. And AI has been a huge part of that. So previously, quality meant the depth that you covered of the subject, right? So do you cover every subtopic? Do you answer every question? Do you cover every like weird side topic that's related to it? But these days, I think people are looking for more immediate answers to their complex questions, and AI is really good at doing that.
Yeah.
And so part of the way that we help people get featured in AI generative responses is by making sure the content is really concise, but still really thorough. So gone are the days where you have to write 2,000 word blog posts, right? Because people are asking complex questions and they want really simple solutions to it. And so a lot of times people are saying, okay, we can write a 500 word blog post, cover everything we need to, and rank in SEO and also rank in AI, because we understand the real search intent for the question that people are asking, even if it's long tail, even if it's short, and we give them a really concise answer right up in the beginning. You don't have to give them this long, backstory. Like we've all read those recipes. We're like, I was walking down the forest one day and I stubbed my toe and realized that I can bake great muffins. Like,
no, we don't care.
Yeah, no one cares about that, right? Get right to the point. Make sure that you answer the question, that you provide all the additional steps if needed, right? So the question of like what makes a high quality is it varies depending on what the keyword is, right? What questions are they asking? So sometimes they need a quick answer. Sometimes they need a thorough explanation. Sometimes it's you give them the short answer now, and then you link to a blog post or an article that gives them more in-depth or additional resources later on, right?
Yeah.
And so the best way that you can find that out is just by typing in that question to Google, seeing what's currently ranking the top 3, and then seeing what those competitors are doing. So you can get kind of like an average of things like word count, subject density, whether or not they're using a lot of images or videos. You can also figure out the modality of that information. Like, is it a TikTok video? Is it a YouTube video? Is it short form, long form? Is it on a blog post? Is it on a podcast? Like, there's lots of different ways to do it. But the real answer to high quality content is to figure out what questions they're asking and what kind of answer format they're looking for, and then delivering on that just over and over and over again. So even if it's 2 different keywords, it could be that one is an in-depth blog article and the other one is a 30-second TikTok explanation.
Interesting. That's a very good way of laying it out. I'm kind of grinning. If you're listening on the podcast right now, if you're not watching the video, I'm kind of grinning because, guys, I swear me and Bryan haven't planned this, but and Bryan, like my listeners know, like I say this over and over and over again because I talk about content marketing it's a little bit different, right? Like a lot of what you're talking about is written. I do a lot more on the video, visual, like audio, delivery and social media. But guys, like I always say this, the principle of content marketing is the exact same, regardless of if it's the type of content I'm talking about or the type of content Bryan's talking about. And you guys have heard me say it over and over and over again, that the definition of content marketing is just answering questions that your target demographic has about who you are, what you do in your industry. This is exactly what Bryan's laying out for you guys. So it's not just from video, it's also from written word, but it helps you in the SEO. And this is why I even bring up this whole point, is because it is important, especially I'm getting somewhere. We're bridging over to AI, right? Like now we're starting to talk about how quickly people can get questions answered. And if you're taking forever to answer a question, or you're not answering it directly, you're not giving a clear, precise kind of instruction set for somebody. We talk about if you're developing some topics for, say, video content, or if you're for blog content or whatever it is for your website. And let's say one of your topics is, what is a cash offer? If a real estate investor offers me cash, what does that mean? And that's the type of question that your leads are asking. If you are just kind of beating around the bush and not giving a very direct answer, that's the type of quality that Bryan's talking about, which is why I even asked that question in the first place, because I wanted to dig into it a little bit, because what you're talking about is the same truth that happens in the video space as well when it comes to content. So it's all the same. It's just different. It's different methods of delivery, right? So that being said, I think this is a really good kind of pivot point to go into talking about the AI stuff and GEO. This is something I really want to spend the rest of this episode on, because it's extremely important. And I think we're kind of, I don't know, you tell me, I feel like we're kind of at the front end of it right now. You've said that you're still doing a lot of like digging and research and testing and that sort of thing. And so I feel like right now, if you're listening to this episode, I mean, I'm going to probably push this episode to try to go out mid-March so that people can get in front of it. I mean, this is the opportunity time. It's not like, don't be waiting 6 months from now, a year from now to start working on this stuff. It's highly important to make sure that you get it going quickly. So before we go into like very tactical, I know you're going to be delivering some really good tactical advice for us to get things going. Do me a favor and just define what is GEO, what does it mean to be ranked in AI and that sort of thing, and probably why it's important and why it would be relevant to talk about in the first place.
Yeah. So in order to rank for GEO, the outcome that you're looking for is that when you go to Google search and you see an AI overview response, that your business shows up in those results. If you're going to ChatGPT and you ask them a question about, let's say, cash home buyers or real estate investors and you mention your market city or market state, you want to see your business show up in those results because the AI engines are using your online presence as a citation, right? As a reference. And so they will actually link to your website. And they'll give you a brief snippet depending on the type of question asked. So sometimes it can be very short. Sometimes it can be a full paragraph. Sometimes it can be multiple paragraphs. But they're getting all this information primarily from your website. And so while the effects are short-lived in some situations, like if you close the tab of the browser in AI overview on Google search, that goes away as soon as the tab or browser is closed. If it's in ChatGPT, it goes away as soon as that session ends, but it can come back. And the thing is that if you meet the criteria to be featured in the first place, you are 10 times more likely to meet that criteria again and again and again in the future.
Yeah.
Right. So the more you get featured onto one AI engine, the more likely it is you're going to be featured in others. So whether that's ChatGPT, Gemini, DeepSeek, any of the other ones, they're all using similar standards to be featuring you in the first place.
Yeah. So, okay, I actually have a question on that, the different platforms. I didn't even plan to ask this, but you brought it up. I would say, like, to me, I use ChatGPT. Gemini's come up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that there's a difference in the way, not from like the real estate investors like us putting content out there, but the user themselves? Do you think that the usage of Gemini versus ChatGPT versus any other AI software, is there going to be a big difference? You know, like Google typically owns a lot of like those new features, right? Those things that come out. We look at YouTube, and then there were some competitors that came out like Vimeo and several others that have now hit the graveyard that we never will hear of again, right? Typically,
Wistia.
Yeah, Wistia. Yeah, right. Like typically when Google touches something, normally they become the king of that, right?
Right.
Do we think that Gemini is going to become what ChatGPT needs to become? I still only use ChatGPT. I really don't use Gemini all that much, but I guess my question's a little unclear. However, I think you know what I'm getting at. Like, is there going to be a difference in usage that maybe you've seen where Gemini's starting to roll a lot more, and so a lot of people are using it? And then if the answer is yes or no, like how do we use it from a generator standpoint to develop content for it?
Yeah. So currently, I think it's just a personal preference as to which AI model that you use, right? If you're using the free version of ChatGPT versus paid version versus Gemini versus DeepSeek, whatever.
It's like 2004. We're trying to decide if we're going to use Bing, Google, or Yahoo search, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Got it.
I don't think the results or the requirements to be featured necessarily change.
Okay.
I think that the target demographics will change. And I think at some point people will lean towards one AI over another for very specific things.
Yeah.
But I don't think, generally speaking, anything has to change in terms of how you get featured onto the AI and compared to like what kind of results you expect from it. Sure. If that makes sense.
No, that
they all kind of seem to be following the same path of like, if they're going to crawl the internet and if they're going to reference an existing business, they're going to link to that business and they're going to pull certain pieces of information to display to their end user. And so that kind of pattern so far has been very consistent.
Okay.
The difference is, how long those links are there, maybe how many different competitors are going to pop up with you. Mm-hmm. So like AI overviews using Gemini on Google search, for example, can show anywhere from like 3 to 7 different websites in a single response. Okay. Versus ChatGPT is way more inclined to use 5 or less. And so there are certain platforms where the overall like conversion rate is going to be lower, but right now it's still very much experimental on all the platforms that I don't think that we can forecast like specific differences for right now.
Yeah. Interrupting this podcast episode to tell you guys that this podcast is managed and produced by Color Media Productions. Yes, shameless plug, that's my company. However, we do this for a lot of other people as well. Most people that we work with are in the real estate investing space. So if you're listening to this podcast specifically, you probably are a real estate investor, given it's called the REI Marketing Weekly. If you're somebody that either wants to start a podcast or you have one going and it's becoming a little bit of a hassle, you're looking to transition to somebody that works a little bit better with a fluid motion in terms of you get the recordings done and then they do everything else. Well, that's what we do. We do fully managed podcasts from start to finish, video, audio, show noting, the graphics, publishing, everything that goes into it. It's a full service business that we run here in a service for you as a real estate investor if you are running a podcast. Additionally, we also do social media and YouTube management as well. So all of that being on the organic side, if you are interested in learning more about working with us and just recording content with guidance and strategy set by myself personally, and then not doing anything else after that, where we're taking care of everything from start to finish, then make sure you go check us out at colormedia.com, CULLER media.com. Hit us up there and we can learn more about working together, hop on a phone call and see what we could do for you. Now back to the episode. Yeah, for sure. I think, and a lot of it's going to be prompting and like how people are using it and that sort of thing. Yeah. Like I gave an example. I did a little screen recording and tested this out when I was live with somebody else, and we went to look up like house buyers in Chicago because that's where I'm out of, and it gave like 5 different answers. So I literally said like, I forgot. Oh, I said something effective. I was trying to see if I could find the ChatGPT response, but I said something effective like, I just inherited a house in Chicago. I don't want to fix it up. I need to get rid of it quickly. It's becoming a burden. How can I sell this as fast as possible? And then it brought up a bunch of house buyers. I think it brought up like 5 options and gave me specific details about each one. And that was down to like Google reviews, Better Business Bureau reviews, and a couple other like key attributes. Right. And then I said, great, thank you. Can you tell me exactly who I should contact for my specific situation? And then it gave me one option, which happened to be a really good friend of mine that I've known for quite some time. Gave me that option and then literally linked their direct phone number with the website and said, would you like me to call for you? To dial for you or something like that.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And it makes it that easy. And so like my kind of like general recognition of this is that like before when you go to search on Google is that it'll give you options, but it's kind of your job to go filter through and see which one you kind of want to do, right? Exactly. Who do you want to call? Like who do you want to roll a dice on? But now AI is like telling you based off of reviews, your specific need, your specific search, what they're going to recommend to you the most. And I think too, and I'm going to shut up after this and let you talk because I really want you to dig into some tactical things that people can start working on. But I'm going to hop back to a conversation because there was something you said previously that really rung a bell on me too. And again, like there's so much relation from what you do and what I do, and even though they're different worlds, but they're still like collided in some ways. Yeah. When I'm teaching people about video content marketing or even like podcasting or whatever, I always say like the 2 first things that you have to do when you're doing content is number 1 is you got to start with a good hook. So it's like, the first thing that comes out of your mouth, bold question, bold statement, that's the thumb stopper, right? When somebody's scrolling through. But the second part, which is what you brought up specifically, was get to the point. I literally it's the hook and then get to the point. Because if you just beat around the bush and start like giving all these irrelevant pieces of information, story, like people don't care about that stuff. That's why when we start the podcast here, like I don't have my guests introduce themselves because I'm not saying Bryan would do this, but other people will get on and introduce themselves for 10 minutes. And then it's like, nobody cared about that. Like we just want information from you, right? That's and truthfully speaking, that's just the tough love situation. So you just get to the point. So the example that I'm going to give you here is this is kind of irrelevant to house buying, but I think you'd find this fascinating, Bryan. So I kind of did a little bit of a test. So on Sunday, I was hanging out with my parents and I had a Ghost energy drink. And my dad asked me, he's like, what do you think the benefits are for that specific drink over like any other ones? And I thought about it. I'm like, I mean, I really just drink it for the caffeine. I like the flavor of them, but I really drink it for the caffeine. Like I'm about to go work out, so I think it's good. So then it got me thinking, I'm like, you know what? I actually don't know. So let me look it up. So then I started I went to Google. I actually specifically, I was like, I'm going to go to Google first, then YouTube, see if I can find a quick video on it. Then I'm going to go to AI and see and compare the searches, right? So I went to Google.
Long route.
And of course, the first thing that I get is from Ghost's website, right? Because like they're marketing, they want people to know like this is safe to drink, it's caffeine, it's all natural, like that, blah, 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 like all the marketing stuff that we would get. But to me, trying to find an actual reliable answer, it's like, no, sorry, Ghost, like I get it, but you're marketing yourself right now. I need another source. And then the next sources were like, blog articles that you had to pay for if you wanted to read more and that kind of stuff. And it's like, no, I'm good. So then I went to YouTube. There was a couple of videos, but then ultimately, like they had like their code down below to get more Ghost, like, and then they would get an affiliate. So then it's unreliable. So then I went to ChatGPT and it laid out like literally everything. I have the prompt here and it like number 1, clean energy boost. And then it gave a definition of what that is. And then it said number 2, 0 sugar, low calorie. And it gave like the benefits of that. And then cognitive and focus benefits and gave like 6 reasons here. But then it also, without me asking, gave potential downsides. I was like, oh, that's interesting because I didn't ask for that. But it said, 200 milligrams of caffeine per can might be too much for some people, especially those sensitive to caffeine. And then it talked about artificial sweeteners like sucralose and a couple other things that they put in it. And then the last thing I gave Bryan was who should drink it. And then it gave actual definitions of who should drink, like who would they recommend to drink this.
Okay.
It was so specific. And the only prompt I gave, this is the question I asked. I said, are there any benefits to drinking Ghost energy drinks? And it gave me all that information. Got to the point. It was super quick. And it gave me information that it knew I was going to ask afterwards. Okay, cool. You gave me the benefits, but what are the downsides? It already gave me that.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? So this is kind of stuff that like I find very fascinating when it comes to AI. So I'm going to shut up now. I want you to kind of lay out, you had mentioned before that you at the end here you're going to be offering us like a checklist of some things that we can go through, but in this you said I think you said just a couple months or whatever that you've been really digging into this. What are some things that you have found that people can take actions on in order to be able to work on their GEO presence and how to get things going?
Yeah, well, and before I dive into that, I kind of want to touch base on something you said, because you really nailed it on the head. Like AI is able to not only understand the depth of the question you're asking, but also anticipate what additional information you are going to want. Right. And that's something that generative, like the large language models of AI that we have right now, these chatbots, that's what they're the best at doing, is gaining the context and the real like intent behind the question. And so that's the hardest part to do when creating content, especially from an SEO perspective, is you have to know not just what is involved with having an inherited house, but also understanding that like there's some contextual information about the probate process and what it's like to have title issues, multiple heirs, and like all these subtopics that the initial like end user has no idea about. Right. And so we as content creators, as website owners, have to be able to anticipate what it is they actually need to solve their problem and then provide it. But AI is a fantastic tool at telling us exactly what that is. And so for the people that have heard me talk on the Care podcast before or on other podcasts, the question is like, how would you use AI for SEO? And that's the number one way that we use it, is figure out what is contextually relevant subtopics to the primary topic, right? And so AI is fantastic at doing that. And it's something that people can use as even a free tool to just increase their SEO right out of the gate. Right. So if you ask AI a question and then give you information that you don't have currently listed on your website, you should definitely add it, right? As just one step to being closer to being featured on AI. But in general, you mentioned a lot of other things that we have currently been experimenting with and seeing success with having our clients get featured in AI responses. The first and most important one is to highlight your reviews. So a lot of real estate investors out there, they are generating reviews. A lot of times it's on Google Business Profile, which I would say is the most important place to get it. But then some investors are going on Yelp or Better Business Bureau or Facebook to generate additional reviews, which is also helpful. But the thing that most people are missing out on is that they're not highlighting those reviews on their website. So a lot of times real estate investors will take a screenshot of a review and put it on their website, or they'll put just the text and maybe like a link, and they'll say it's like a testimonial, right? Which is okay. That's better than nothing. But really the difference between getting you to rank in SEO and getting you to rank for GEO is that you need to add an interactive widget on your homepage and all of your core conversion pages that specifically link to individual Google reviews. So there's plugins and widgets and scripts and all kinds of stuff out there that you can use, and it has to be interactive and it has to link back to the original review. And so when you do this, what happens is that Google associates not just one review with your website or one snippet of text or one person's name that left your review on a third-party site, but you are creating multiple links in multiple places between your website and your Google Business Profile. And if you can do the same thing for your Facebook reviews, your Better Business Bureau reviews, try to utilize the reviews you have in as many places as you can, but primarily like your homepage, your About Us page, obviously your reviews page, maybe even like the About page, the how it works, the, get my cash offer, the comparison page. There's a ton of situations where people would really benefit from seeing, like you were saying, real, candid, unbiased opinions about that product or service. Reviews are a great answer to that, right?
Yeah.
And so just using that more and more on your website is the first and probably most important step to getting featured in GEO. The other one is just making sure that your Google Business Profile is active. So if you haven't touched a Google Business Profile in forever, if you don't respond to your reviews, you have to immediately change that. It is just as much of an important social media channel as Facebook or Instagram or TikTok. Like, publish these little posts. Start with once a week. If you can do more, then sure, scale it up, but be sustainable with it, right? At least once a month. And then after that, try to go once a week. Other things, if Google sends you an email asking about holiday hours, you better be sure to update your holiday hours, because they're basically telling you that people are asking questions about whether or not you're going to be open on President's Day, right? Like, it's not a normal holiday that most people would think about, but if Google sends you an email asking if you're open, just go quickly jump in there, update your hours, say, yeah, these are our hours for this holiday and we will be open, and it's little stuff like that sends Google's signal that you are still active on this platform.
Yeah.
Another one is to just generate as many reviews as you can. Some people are maybe a little bit skeptical or hesitant to do this. Josh, I know you and I were still in the seminar where Paul Myers talked about his strategies for generating reviews.
Yeah.
It's brilliant. If you guys haven't heard about that technique, look up Paul Myers, look at how many reviews he has on his Google Business Profile. It'll blow your mind, but it works. And ever since I, sat into that seminar, I started talking to my clients about it, and it's been working for them too.
Yeah.
But generating reviews is another really solid signal that you're active, that you're trustworthy, you're authoritative. And so all of that helps when AI is looking at your website and looking at your competitors to see who they should feature. They want fresh content, right? I know this is not a new topic. I'm probably preaching to the choir here, but fresh reviews is also helpful. And some of the other things that, we see a lot of is Google Maps. So a lot of times on real estate investor websites, they'll take a picture of a map, or they'll take a map and they'll trace out their service area. But just like Google reviews, you have to have something that you can embed in there that Google can follow. They can read the script. They can associate, hey, this is a Google map. It is interactive, and it shows us exactly not only your service area, but also your Google Business Profile. So again, you are anchoring your physical location on your website, and you can do that for each location page. So if you've got one for Atlanta and you've got one for Marietta, different Google Maps on each page, and so there are ways where you can really emphasize your location and also highlight Google Business Profile at the same time.
Yeah.
Wow. And then lastly, the really big one is just making sure that you have a good EEAT score. And that stands for expertise, experience, authority, and trust. Now, this is an SEO acronym, but Google has come out and said that every single time that a search query pops into their system, they consider that and check it against the different sources' EEAT scores, or the double EAT score. And so I get a ton of questions about, what is the EAT score? How do I know what my score is? What can I do to increase my score? And that's one of the things that, in my agency, we created a whole checklist of things that we think is going to be the highest factors for your double EAT score specifically. And then, at the end of the episode, we'll give you a link where you can go get this checklist and you can fill it out yourself and check your own website. And this is just one of the tools that we use in my agency to get our agents to rank, but it is a very, very important one. And it's going to help not just GEO, but your SEO too, because that is a huge factor.
Yep.
And then I guess the last tip is to try to get as much structured data on your website as you can, in addition to putting that in other places. So let's say, for example, like structured data means either like schema, which is just like a weird technical term for things that search engines and AI can identify as being consistent across multiple platforms. So the most common one is what we call the NAP, the name, address, and phone number. So phone numbers, addresses, and the name of the business is something you can find even if it's not a link to your website or a link to your Google Business Profile. So Google especially can reference this even if it's just in text, even if it's in an image, even if it's in like mentioned in a video. They can kind of pull that information out because it's structured data, right? So featured snippets or schema is another good way to do that. So you can add like review schema, you can add business schema, you can add personality schema, or if you give recommendations for books, you could add book review schema, things like that. This is kind of a can of worms to get into. So I'd recommend speaking with someone that has more of a technical background and can advise you on what kind of schema to add, because there are thousands of them, no exaggeration. Because it could be for anything from like movie reviews to recipes to famous actors to, you know, everything under the sun. So talk to someone who has experience with this and then figure out what kinds of schemas you need. And then you can either hire them or you can implement it yourself, like add this schema to your website. Hugely important. And AI definitely looks at that because it's easy to find, right? It's easy to find structured data because they don't have to parse through a ton of different text or images or videos or any of that. You basically serve it to them on a silver platter and they say, okay, thank you. We're going to take this and use that. You know, and the nice thing is that once AI starts to pick up your website, they'll use it over and over and over again because they've already crawled your website. They've already determined that you are an authority in the space and in the local market. And so anytime that certain keywords pop up that they can associate with you, then they're going to grab your website first over your competitors because you've already laid out the groundwork for them.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. A lot to unpack there. So you're going to be sharing, if you want to talk about a checklist with us, because I think this is going to be valuable to talk about right now. You want to kind of explain that and how people can get a hold of that?
Yeah. So what it is, it's just a Google spreadsheet that you make a copy of so you can put in all of your own information on. And if you go to foxandowlmarketing.com/EEAT, you can get a link to that particular spreadsheet, and then you can make a copy, use it yourself. What I'd recommend doing is going through the initial pass and then documenting what your starting score is and the date that you did it. And then if there's anything on there, like it'll ask questions like, do you have a Better Business Bureau logo on your homepage? And if it's yes, you check the box and it gives you a point value. And so it's on a scale of like 0 to, I think it's 105 now. I don't think I adjusted the formula to keep it to 100. But the idea is that the closer to the high score that you are, the better your WEAT score is. And so the more of these boxes you can check, the higher your score is going to be, the more likely you're going to be able to rank in SEO as well as GEO. And so a lot of it has to do with, are your social media channels active? Are you publishing new content? Do people tag you in social media? Are you featuring reviews on your website? Do you have a Better Business Bureau accreditation? And is that featured on your website? Do you have your core values listed on your company page? Do you have pictures of the core people within your company and a short bio about them as well? Tons of stuff like that. I think there's 30 or 40 different things that you can check, all of which contribute to the WEAT score. And this is a really big part of what we do in order to help with local SEO as well as GEO.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. I appreciate you being willing to share that. So you guys make sure that you we'll have that down in the show notes in the description below. So make sure you do go check that out and take advantage of it. I'm going to be doing that for my, not just myself, but also my clients as well, because I think that'd be very, very, a very good value add as well. You unpacked a lot there, and I think that there's a lot of that people need to think about, but I appreciate you laying that out from like start here to here to here, because I think the bottom line is a lot of people from being a naive standpoint, I think a lot of people just don't really truly understand what SEO actually is. Like maybe conceptually they're like, yeah, I understand like it impacts, how searches happen in Google and that sort of thing. And, there's similarities between AI and SEO, obviously like, GEO and SEO. And I think they do play hand in hand. And correct me if I'm wrong, Bryan, I think that the fine line is that GEO is just going to give a lot more of a direct and specific answer as opposed to Google giving you options and you really need to kind of sift through and find your own answer. Is that good? kind of way to part it up.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So I think, and it's important, like the rise of AI is like people are using it now more. I use ChatGPT 20 times a day, and it's for like everything randomly. Like a lot of the content creation that we do and that sort of thing, a lot of the scripting, show notes, and creating topics, outlines for clients, like strategies. I'll record, I'll do a strategy call with somebody and then pop it into ChatGPT and have it give us a whole like contextual strategy off of just the call without taking any notes or anything. Just, the amount of usage for it. It's not just a search platform. It's also it's a tool, ultimately for a lot of people that people are just going to use more and more. Right. And like we talked about before Bryan went into mentioning all that, is we're kind of at the forefront of this right now. So take advantage of it while there's, it's sort of a blue ocean right now, but it's definitely not a red ocean, but more and more people are starting to work on it. So get ahead of it, guys. But Bryan, man, you laid out some absolutely, you got my wheels turning. I'll say that, because I'm going to be thinking about working on this kind of stuff for myself as well. But I appreciate you, man. Thank you so much for hopping on. Definitely, I mean, we're going to be cresting at 40 minutes here for this episode. I definitely want to have you back on again to talk about some of those latter things that you mentioned, because I think we can go a little bit more in depth with them.
For sure.
Specifically schemas. Like I have no experience in that, none. So I think that's something that I'd love to go into a little bit more in depth, and I think would be valuable. So appreciate your time, man. Thank you so much for joining us today, and I look forward to having you back again soon.
Awesome. I appreciate you having me.
All right. Yeah. Awesome. And then, Bryan, before you go, you mentioned the checklist. Mm-hmm. Is there actually a way for people to get connected with you if they wanted to learn about working with you on maybe their websites and that sort of thing? Like, what's the best way to get connected?
Yeah, honestly, it's probably just going to the contact us page on the website. So it's foxdownmarketing.com. And so you can get a hold of me through there.
Okay. Awesome. Sounds good. Guys, again, that is going to be linked down in the description below and in the show notes. So make sure you take full advantage of that and go contact Bryan. Very reputable person. I met him at a Mastermind Collective Genius that a lot of people that have been on the show are a part of it as well. So Bryan, once again, thank you for hopping on. I look forward to having you back again soon.
Thank you, Josh.
All right, guys, that's going to do it for today's episode. Thank you so much for joining us and listening in today. If you haven't already, make sure you have subscribed to the show. Leave some great reviews over on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. And then if you're not, make sure you are subscribed to my channel on YouTube, dropping 2 to 3 times a week, really, really good instructional pieces of content about creating content. And a lot of stuff that we talked about with Bryan today, I also go deep into that from the video content side as well. So make sure you do go check that out. My YouTube channel will be linked down below, but you can go to youtube.com/Josh Culler and you'll find me there. Other than that, thank you so much for joining us today. We'll catch you on the next one. See you later.